Welcome to 1996, a simpler time. A time where movies could still just be considered entertainment for the sake of entertainment. A time where major studios were willing to take calculated gambles with the stories they were willing to tell. This also just so happens to be the era where one rubber-faced comedy tour de force took the world by storm. A mere 2 years earlier, Jim Carrey had arrived on the Hollywood scene with what can only be described as one of the most successful breakout years in cinematic history.
Somebody stop me!
His over-the-top performances in the likes of The Mask, Dumb and Dumber, and Ace Ventura had raked in a combined $700 million at the box office and truly established him as a major player, even landing him a role as the Riddler in 1995's Batman Forever.
Now that's impressive!
So to say that fans were eagerly awaiting his next project would be a little bit of an understatement. Jim Carrey could seemingly do no wrong. So what movie would he bring his Midas touch to next, people wondered.
The Cable Guy.
Oh god. And this barely scratches the surface of the negativity. Jesus, this movie got eviscerated when it was first released. The critics were disgusted by it and audiences just frankly didn't know what to make of it. So, what's the crack with it? Well, considerably darker than anything Carrey had attempted before, the plot tells the story of a sociopathic cable guy who embraces Matthew Broderick's character Stephen as a preferred customer and grants him the priceless gift of illegal cable. And all that he expects in return is to be welcomed into Stephen's life and to be his new best friend. Well, there's no such thing as a free lunch, I guess. What starts off as neurotic but relatively harmless behaviour quickly descends into outright stalking when the cable guy, who goes by the name of Chip Douglas, leaves dozens of unanswered phone messages in rapid succession on Stephen's phone. What follows is a slow and insidious attempt to weasel his way into Stephen's life, and anytime he doesn't feel like things are going his way, he manages to manipulate those closest to Stephen into thinking that he's a misunderstood soul and that Stephen is simply treating him cruelly. I mean, this motherfucker was gaslighting all around him before that was even a thing. So ultimately, what plays out is a bit of a game of cat and mouse, with Chip chasing an unrequited friendship with Stephen. And we genuinely get the sense at times that he's trying his very best to do what he feels is the right thing, but somehow manages to make a bollocks of it on every single occasion. Right, well, let's get into it. The first act is surprisingly light compared to what follows in the second and third, which in a way feels like it was a deliberate creative decision from director Ben Stiller, as we the audience get lulled into the same false sense of security as our dear friend Stephen when he first meets the cable guy. In a shockingly blatant exposition-y phone call to his best friend, played by an unusually reserved Jack Black, we learn that Stephen's just been booted out of the home that he once shared with his girlfriend and is now forced to rent an apartment of his own. Why has he been exiled, you may ask? What heinous misdeed must he have committed to find himself in such a position? Infidelity? Being married to his job? Not quite, my dear friends. Stephen had the audacity to ask his beloved girlfriend to marry him.
Jerk off!
Yep, that's it. He just asked her to marry him. And instead of giving him a simple yes or no, she tells him she wants to take some time apart. I mean, Jesus Christ, I don't know who's worse in this situation. Her for being heartless enough to give her long-term boyfriend the old, I'm going to put you on ice while I play the field, and if nothing better comes along, then maybe I'll consider your proposal. Or him for being enough of a simp to just let it happen instead of walking away and preserving what's left of his dignity. But anyway, I digress. Jables tells him to slip his cable guy 50 quid upon arrival and that the dude will hook him up with all the premium channels for free. So eventually, after hours of waiting, the cable guy shows up and behaves in typical Jim Carrey fashion, spouting inappropriate one-liners, pulling some outrageous faces.
Is this what you want? Huh?
Good stuff. When Stephen finally plucks up the courage to ask him about the whole illegal cable thing, the cable guy busts his balls and tells him that he's going to report him to the authorities before bursting out laughing and ultimately doing the deed, and then inviting Stephen up to the local satellite to see how the whole operation works. Stephen's a bit weirded out by that, but he figures, fuck it, I'm never going to see this lad again, so I may as well be polite. So he goes, sure, we should do that one day. Cable guy can't see this for the polite blow off that it is and says, great, pick you up tomorrow, before running away so Stephen can't respond. Fuck me, this guy moves fast. I can't help but feel that if Stephen had adopted a similar approach with his girlfriend, he'd be fucking engaged right now. So Stephen goes to work the next day and has a pitch meeting where he knocks his proposal out of the park, impressing all of the suits in attendance. What was the proposal? fucked if I can remember, as it turns out to be completely unimportant to the plot. It's literally there as a vehicle for his obnoxious boss to treat him like shit and constantly remind him that if this thing fails, it's your ass. You know, just to hammer home the point that Stephen is a spineless dweeb who never stands up for himself, even when he would be totally justified in doing so. Later that evening, the cable guy arrives to bring Stephen for a ride on the information superhighway, but he actually just brings him to a giant satellite dish that broadcasts TV to the local area.
Disappointed!
It's here that we discover the cable guy's real name is Chip Douglas, and that he was effectively raised by television as a result of being neglected by his single mother, which would explain his propensity for social awkwardness and general lack of self-awareness. We see a glimpse of what might actually be the seeds of a budding friendship between these two, with Chip even offering Stephen relationship advice before telling him that Sleepless in Seattle is on tomorrow and that he should invite his ex around to watch it. We then see Stephen and his friends playing a game of basketball when who should arrive unexpectedly but Chip Douglas himself, and he's all like, "What a coincidence, you guys play here too?" Which would be fine and all if he was actually there with friends of his own, but he's literally by his fucking self. Who rents out an indoor basketball court to play a 1-on-0 game? It just doesn't happen. Anyway, it turns out they're conveniently a man short for their game and they bring Chip into the fold. After awkwardly insisting to be on his buddy Stephen's team, Chip goes on a bit of a rampage, aggressively tackling his opponents and even using Jables as a stepladder to achieve a rim-shattering slam dunk. It's game over at that point and the lads leave, all pissed off with Stephen, who is in turn pissed off with Chip. He tells Chip that they're not pals and basically says, "Don't contact me again." And Chip respects his wishes, and that's where our story ends.
I'm just joking with you.
Stephen arrives home to find dozens of voice messages on his answering machine from our dear friend Chip, each more bizarre than the last. At this point, Stephen is officially weirded out. The next day, Stephen's got Robin round for that screening of Sleepless in Seattle and is talking shit about his boss when the cable mysteriously cuts off, forcing Stephen to call his old buddy Chip, who only agrees to reinstall the service under the condition that they hang out again, to which Stephen reluctantly agrees. So he brings him to medieval times for dinner, where Chip has somehow organised it that the two lads will have a bit of a battle for the entertainment of the paying audience. Now this is where it all gets a bit absurd. Despite having no formal training or preparation of any sort, they engage in a duel with legitimately fucking lethal weapons and even ride on horseback for a jousting contest. Stephen wins the contest and to his surprise even enjoys himself a little bit. So Chip has found himself back in the good books. For now. When they return to Stephen's apartment, it transpires that Chip has broken into it at some point to deliver a whole heap of high-end TV and stereo equipment as a surprise for his new best buddy. Stephen's like, "Get this shit out of my house, bruh," and Chip reluctantly agrees before suggesting that they have a karaoke bash to make the most of it before he has his delivery guy buddy take it all away. So we cut to this karaoke bash with what I can only describe as the most bizarre and eclectic mix of characters that we've ever seen assembled in one place since The Dark Crystal, and oh my god. Anyway, it turns out Stephen doesn't know any of these people and they're all just preferred customers of Chip's, including one very attractive lady who's giving Stephen the lust eye. Chip encourages Stephen to go for it and he hooks up with her, only to have it revealed to him the next morning that the lady was a prostitute who had been hired by Chip for the express purpose of helping Stephen get over Robin. Stephen is appalled and tells Chip to get the fuck out and never come back. In a desperate attempt to make amends, Chip goes to a restaurant disguised as a bathroom attendant and beats the ever-loving shit out of Owen Wilson, who Robin is on a date with. A scene which is an absolute joy to watch. Not just because of Carrey's comical overacting, but mostly because Owen Wilson's character is an utterly obnoxious dickhead who you really learn to loathe in the mere 3 minutes of screen time that he has prior to his ass whipping. For his next magic trick, Chip then gives Robin free cable under the false pretense that it's a gift from Stephen. Robin, in keeping with her wildly erratic character, decides that this is the gesture that will have her reunite with Stephen. Fuck buying her a ring and asking for her hand in marriage, it is the gift of HBO that showed her that Stephen really is ready for a serious commitment. Fuck me. If you think that's frustrating behaviour to watch, then I hate to tell you, but it's about to get a whole lot worse from some of the other characters. Robin calls Stephen to tell him that she's delighted with his thoughtful gift, and this is the straw that broke the camel's back for Stephen when it comes to Chip. I mean, the fucker did break into your house and injure your friends during a game of basketball, mate, but sure, let's go with this. Stephen tells Chip in no uncertain terms that it's over, and this is where we get to see the full extent of Chip's crazy in action. Stephen's at work the next day for a meeting about his project, when he gets arrested for being in possession of stolen goods, and while he's in the slammer, his dad pays him a visit and spends the entire time berating him. Stephen's trying to explain that Chip had framed him, and his father, who has literally known him his whole life, is having none of it. Upon getting released from jail, Stephen attends a family dinner, only to discover that Robin has invited Chip, because reasons. So anyway, they all settle in for a game of porno password. Stephen is made to feel deeply uncomfortable at Chip whispering sexual phrases to his mother and Robin, and it culminates in Chip antagonising Stephen on the down low, causing Stephen to lash out and punch him in the face, leading his family to once again side with this total stranger who they have no relationship with whatsoever. Stephen's only rational friend, Jables, does some research and discovers that Chip Douglas has a history of stalking people and assuming the names of characters from fictional television shows. Stephen then gets a call from Chip, who is now acting full-on psychotic, telling him that he's going to pay Robin a visit. Stephen races to Robin's apartment but discovers he's too late. He bumps into a neighbour for some more convenient exposition, and she tells him that she heard Chip say he was taking Robin for a ride on the information superhighway. Cut to the satellite dish from earlier. Chip has gone full mustache-twirling evil villain and is giving an impassioned speech to Robin, who is tied up and hanging from the satellite. Stephen arrives and they engage in a scuffle, and by the end Chip has realised that TV is in many ways responsible for his warped outlook on life. He feels that he has an obligation to spare a generation of kids from the same fate as him, so he decides to sacrifice himself by jumping on the satellite dish from a height and destroying it. He does just that, and the cable instantly cuts off in the homes of people throughout the city. Stephen rescues Robin, and a helicopter comes to cart away a severely injured Chip. The movie ends with one of the paramedics in the chopper telling Chip to hang in there, buddy, and Chip gives him a sinister smirk to imply that he has not yet given up his stalking ways. So, where does this bad boy rank on the watchometer? Well, with an intriguing if uneven plot, a layered performance from Jim Carrey, a highly amusing subplot featuring the trial of a child actor, and more cameos than you can shake a stick at, The Cable Guy is remarkably watchable. It somehow manages to be both funny and disturbing, but is ultimately a rumination on the influence that television might have on somebody with psychotic tendencies. This one's definitely worth a look if you have 2 hours to spare.